And of course, there are many more Angelines out there in those countries waiting to be reached by the work of Anne and others. And now, Your Highness, ladies and gentlemen, our closing panel, a chance for some final thoughts on what we've heard here at WISE, on what Anne has brought up, and indeed the education of the future. So I'd like to ask my three panelists to come up on stage now. Thank you. A warm welcome to you all, and let me introduce the panel to you. Delighted to welcome Jacques Lang, the former French Minister of Culture for many years, also the French Minister of Education, now the President of the Institut du Monde Arabe in Paris, which is a quite remarkable and wonderful place for anyone who doesn't know it already. Monsieur Lang is going to speak in French, so if you require translation, as I do, please use your headsets and you'll find translation into the different languages. I'm also delighted to have as part of the panel Sarah Kamal, who graduated in International Affairs from Qatar University and is a WISE learner, and also Charles Leadbeater, who's the author of several books on innovation, including looking at educational solutions around the world, learning apps. Charles, you were the author of the 2011 WISE book, and you have a new book out which is called Learning to Make a Difference. Learning to Make a Difference, which everyone here can get a copy of on their way out on their way out of the room. Sarah, perhaps we can start with you. Just you're a WISE learner. You've been graduated through the education system here in Qatar. Creativity in education has been the theme here, and I wonder what that means to you.
Creativity to me, I truly believe that all human beings are creative by nature, but how can we make my creativity, your creativity, as our creativity? And I truly felt that at the Learners program here at WISE. We come from different backgrounds, we're all creative. We come from different backgrounds, different cultures from around the world, but we come here to create one innovative idea to tackle a solution that we feel must be fixed in this world.
Charles, what does it mean to you? Because you've seen examples from right around the world of people doing things differently.
Yes, well, I think Sarah just put it incredibly well. If you listen to what she just said, it's about having a purpose, tackling a problem that matters. It's about making something, making a difference, and it's about coming together. And if you then think about what Anna's just said, I mean, what Anna's just described is not just a schools program. CAMFED is a kind of growing community which has become ever more creative, and it's become ever more creative around a kind of cause or a mission. And that's what sustained it. And actually, all innovation comes from communities. Individuals play a vital role, but innovation is sustained by creative communities, and usually creative communities which have a sense of mission and cause. And if we want school to encourage young people to become innovative, to coach the habits and culture of innovation and creativity, then school has to become more like a creative community with a cause. It has to become a place where children go to learn how to explore and make, to collaborate with other people, and to find their own purpose and passion.
Yeah. It is a compelling idea, a creative community. And yet, Monsieur Lang, if we look at the education systems in many rich countries, including France, you wouldn't call this a flexible system, would you? For France has an excellent education system, but one that is pretty strict.
Well, thank you very much, first of all, for having organized this panel and having accepted to have so many languages available in this session.
Ça m'évite de parler dans mon très rustique.
It allows me to not try to speak in my very limited English, which should have been very harsh to your ears. Well, it's indeed true. It's true that even in France, the highly centralized system where teachers are trained at the national level, or where the curricula are designed at a national level, let's say there's not much room for innovation and creativity. But there are certain other countries, the Nordic countries, the United States, and even here, in fact, even in Qatar, because yesterday I visited the Lycée Voltaire, and I saw how there was this blending of different cultures. There are about 30 different nationalities present, and they learned both the arts and the sciences together. And there was a lot more room for creativity than one would have in high schools in France.
Do you wish that you could have that in high schools in France? Because what Anne was talking about, the waste of human potential when children are not educated at all, in the case of some children in Africa, that can still happen in a country like France, where a child, the system doesn't suit the child, or the system is not flexible enough for the child.
Yes, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Because, well, the French system is something that I'm familiar with. The French system is good for good students. It's excellent for excellent students. But unfortunately, very often is not able to solve the problem of the 20% of underachievers who give up. And we are not able to help those students. And it is indeed a loss of potential. It is very sad. It is a source of suffering for those children and their families and for society as a whole. And that is the reason why, when I was Minister of Education, I tried to completely revamp the pedagogical systems and the school curricula.
Charles, from what you've seen in different parts of the world, where are the systems, and Monsieur Lang has pointed to some of the Nordic countries, but where are the systems which are really addressing the challenges that education faces?
Well, I think you're going to see people voting with their feet to some extent, because I think the frustration with the inadequacy of traditional, conventional, rather rigid, standardized academic forms of learning is leaving too many people disappointed. And so I think you're seeing elements of, say, low-cost private schools or alternative provision in the developing world, which are developing different kinds of curricula. I think round the world you're seeing an enormous growth in alternative kinds of vocational oriented provision, and I think you're seeing creative uses of technology which will come sort of outside and around the education system. Open badges promoted by Mozilla, the thing that I'm chair of, Apps for Good, which are creating new ways which are more interactive, more collaborative, more productive. They're about making, not just sitting and writing out or doing exams. So I think you're seeing all of that, but what we need is some of the leading jurisdictions in the world, Finland, British Columbia, Alberta, Victoria, Singapore, to really grasp the nettle and acknowledge that the current system, driven by PISA and all those sorts of league tables, that lets too many people down, and there is a way to do it differently, which is not a huge risk. That actually it makes sense. This is common sense now.
Is it really not a huge risk? I mean, to revamp your education system, it's a brave politician who
I think the current
that.
system is a huge risk because actually it wastes such an enormous potential in young people. It's actually we're taking huge risks at the moment. We're taking huge risks with a system that delivers graduates to unemployment in the United States.
Sarah, as a wise learner, you saw different systems around the world, the wise learners sharing their experiences. I wonder what your own experience was like, the extent to which you have been encouraged to be a free thinker within the constraints of the system.
Yes, I do consider myself as a free spirit. And when I was in high school, I wasn't allowed to debate or question the system and how the tools they were teaching us. But at university, at Qatar University, we have so many teachers from different backgrounds, and they allowed me to debate, to question, and to be very creative and innovative in my ideas. It takes the teacher to allow you to be creative. For example, I had a presentation, and I thought it's boring, and I don't want to do it. 5 hours, I told my professor, you know what? I want to change my topic. I want to say how the Gundam style song affected the South Korean economy. And I want to speak about that. And he was, okay, do it. And it was great.
But you needed the license from him to do it.
Yeah.
Well, Monsieur Lang, you know, you spent a long time as the French cultural minister, and I wonder whether you think that a way to inject this kind of innovation and flexibility into mainstream education is by emphasizing the role of arts and culture.
C'est une question très importante que vous posez là.
This is indeed a very interesting question that you have just raised. Nietzsche, you know, said that the people who lived in his times believed that the role of art in society was like a sort of a trinket, you know, just like a decorative item, that something that one would clip onto one's jacket. And I believe that art shouldn't simply be a trinket, but it should be at the very core, at the very heart of education. And this is really what World Innovation Summit for Education actually means. It should be really at the heart of educating a child, like the princes during the Renaissance were trained in music, in singing, in theater, in poetry. So it's not just a luxury, it's a necessity. And this is the reason why in my own country I wanted to implement a national plan for all the schools of the country, not just experimental schools, but mainstream schools. I wanted to include art in the school curricula, because I'm absolutely convinced that this is necessary. I'm absolutely convinced that introducing art and culture as fundamental subjects in school is indeed a way of having better access to other fundamental subjects, mathematics, languages, etc. Art in school gives self-confidence to the child. It enables the child to take risks. So there is no education without risk-taking. There is no education without making mistakes, without failure. So the school is sort of a door opener. It's like, the art in school is like, you know, an open sesame towards other subjects.
You know the barriers that exist to that kind of risk-taking. The opinion poll that was conducted ahead of WISE said it was the assessment methods, because every teacher knows that they will be judged on the exam results of their children, and not many parents want their children to be the ones who are experimented upon.
Premièrement,
well, first and foremost, if the conventional system is maintained, and I think it should be changed, I think that art and culture, what I'm saying, should be part and parcel of the assessment process, of the final exams themselves. And I think that we probably need to have a sort of a vertical organization of the system. You know, Einstein said something really wonderful. He said, if you want your children to be intelligent, read them fairy tales. And if you want them to be even more intelligent, read them even more fairy tales.
Thank you. Could I ask you in the audience, please raise your hand and we'll get microphones to you as before if you'd like to comment on anything. So, microphone 2, and after that we'll go up there to 6.
Yes, hello. I am Wadha from Qatar. My question is to Mr. Lang.
Do you mind just standing up for us? Sorry.
Sure.
Thank you.
So, je vais parler en français. On sait que la France, quand on dit la France,
I know that when we talk about France, well, France is synonymous with art, with wining and dining, fine cuisine, painting, poetry, etc. But in French schools, we don't really see that much. We don't see the focus on art in schools. So I think there is a real gap between the primary and secondary schools in France and the prestigious grandes écoles, as we call them in France, of higher education. I just finished my executive MBA in HEC, which is the French business school, and I think that there's a lot of potential to do higher studies in France. HEC is one of the top-ranking business schools in the world, but so there's something lacking when it comes to primary and secondary education in France. Why do you think that is so, and what can we do to remedy this? Because, you know, every time I say I'm a graduate from HEC, they say, wow, how did you get in? It's so hard to get in, even for the French. So how do you address this issue?
Thank you very much. I'm going to take a couple more questions before I come back to the panel. So the microphone 6.
First of all, I would like to thank you for this opportunity. My name is Khalid Al-Satouf. I am from Syria, and I am a teacher and engineer, and I live in Australia. I came here not knowing much, but I really found a lot of ideas, and I would like to also take this opportunity to thank Her Highness Princess Moza for her role in supporting the education sector, and particularly I was informed about her visits to the refugee camps in Turkey, which I visited myself for Syrian refugees. As a teacher, I seen the situation there, how bad it is, and I talked to professional teachers who working in the camps, and they got like every 3 or 6 months $100. Imagine how demoralized they can be, and what impact that is bringing to the children who are supposed to be learning.
Thank you. So is your point about the education for refugee children?
Which I want to come to is when you, as a education community, consider or that the tyranny who causes the destruction of children's education become a crime which should be punished. The other thing is, I have established a society just called Nation Builder Society, and would like to look at this situation as a disastrous, which requires urgent questions, urgent attention from everyone. And if you like to assist, you can find me on Who's Who. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'd like to turn to microphone 1.
Youssef Gaboun, founder of New Open Education. My question is for Charles. Actually, if you were called by a country to redesign its education system, or more precisely, its schooling system, how would you do it differently? And this time, not with the objective of producing, hardworking, docile workers, easily moldable to the changing needs of the industry, the government, and the army, but with the purpose of producing citizens with strong critical thinking skills, with creativity, with leadership, values, and communityship. How would you do it? Would you take the Finland system as a model and bring it, let's say, to this country? Would you go as far as creating Sudbury Valley schools, with extremely education system? How would you do it step by step?
Thank you. I'm just going to take one more question, microphone 5, before we come back to the panel.
I am Amadou Ba from Sierra Leone. I'd rather speak in French. The question is for Dr. Lang. Dr. Lang, moi je viens de la Sierra Leone.
Mr. Lang, I'm from Sierra Leone, and I have made an observation, which is that French is on the decline in Africa. For example, in my country, one no longer teaches French. Well, we had the Alliance Française in Sierra Leone, and I have learned that the French government has closed down the Alliance Française in Sierra Leone. Now, as a former Minister of Education, what do you plan to do in order to solve this problem? Because, you know, when it comes to creativity, we all know that the more languages we have and the more languages we learn, the better we're able to communicate. It is absolutely crucial to globalization. So I was just wondering what you intended to do to address this issue. What would you do, let's say?
Thank you. Before we, I'm going to ask Monsieur Lang in a moment just to answer those two questions that are relating to the French language and elite schools in France. Although clearly French is not on the decline on the panel or in the audience here. So I think the French can be reassured on that front. But Charles, can I ask you first to address this point? If you were starting from scratch, paint a picture of your ideal system.
Oh, if I were starting from scratch, what I would say is the problem with the system we've got is that the industrial aspect of it, the teaching, sitting in rows, listening, teaching to the test, is far too big. And I would crunch that right down to maybe a third of the size at the moment. And I would do that really efficiently with technology and very good teachers. And I would make sure that basic literacy, mathematics, core history, science was done really, really well. And then in the space created, I would do a number of other things. First of all, I would make sure that virtually all children had an experience of being peer learners where they helped other children learn, because I think that's a vital aspect. The alumni aspect of CAMFED is a vital component. So I would make sure they do that. Secondly, I would make sure they leave school having made lots of things, made films.
Physically, with their
physically.
Hands.
It could be making models, it could be making a business, it could be making food, but that going to school is a kind of productive making activity, not just
something active
and creative, and crucially doing it with other people. And I would make sure that going to school was a place where you went to ask and open up questions rather than just deliver the answer that's required. And that children would leave school with a much, much more rounded account of themselves and their achievements, with some qualifications, absolutely for sure, but with a lot else to talk about themselves when they go and present themselves to people they want to work with. But I just wanted also just quickly to refer to this Syrian gentleman's question, because actually the proportion of children in school is going up everywhere in the world but in conflict zones. And in conflict zones, it's not going up at all. Yeah. And if there is a case for innovation to find innovative new ways to deliver education in low-cost, flexible ways, it is in precisely these kinds of places.
Yes. And also in terms of Syrian refugees, I think their chances of getting an education is very different depending on which countries they ended up in. So Her Highness has seen what's happening in Turkey, which is very positive. I think in Lebanon it's much more difficult, and I'm going to be seeing that for myself with Syrian refugees in Lebanon next week. Sarah, I wonder what you think, listening to Charles's ideal picture, because you were pointing out the difference between the way that you were encouraged at university compared to school.
I totally believe that creativity must be at the heart in school. Start with teachers, opening up for their students to be more creative and innovative. And in schools is where you'll see the difference. You'll see these skills building up. You'll see leaders. You'll see entrepreneurs. You'll see what we want for this world. Start from the root with the teachers.
Thank you. Monsieur Lang, so the two questions for you about the decline of French. I mean, obviously you're not in government now, but what is happening with the encouraging of French in other parts of the world? And also, I mean, this is one of the most striking features of the French education system, the elite schools. Great for those who graduate from those schools, but a barrier for many others.
First of all, as you mentioned yourself, two questions were asked in French, and I'm sure many others could have been asked in French as well. We are in Qatar. We're a country. I'm a nationalist. I'm nationalist at all. I'm an internationalist, if anything. But I've always said that I'm always struck by the love for the French language in Qatar. We have two secondary schools, the Bonaparte School and the Voltaire School, and there are so many people here in this very room who speak wonderful French. The Emir himself, when he came to Paris, when he came on a state visit in the month of June, made his speech at the Élysée Palace, the presidential palace, in French. And for us, for all of us present, it was a very emotional moment. Well, yes, well, you're right about French being on the decline. Well, I would like to ask the question to the Minister of Education in Sierra Leone and to see why this is so. The young lady who spoke remarkable French, the Qatari lady, who really raised a very important issue about the French education system. Indeed, the French system targets a very high level of excellence in the schools, universities, and in research programs. But then there is this question that I mentioned earlier. We have a highly selective system, so it leaves thousands of children and students by the wayside. Because of this, they lose hope, and this is inadmissible. This is unacceptable, and that is why I think that there is a need to change the education system in France. It should be based on creativity, so that all these children can go back to school.
What do you think of the kind of system that Charles talked about then? If you were back in government and doing that Minister of Education job again today, what would you do?
Mais je crois qu'il a raison. D'ailleurs, les expériences.
I think he's absolutely right. In fact, the personal and the very positive experiments that were conducted in France and even elsewhere. Recently, I was in Morocco, in the Hassan II University, and I noticed that students succeed because we not only teach them law over there, but also art and culture. The French Nobel Prize winner for economics works in a center in Toulouse, which opens its doors to all sorts of subjects and different ways of teaching that focus on all the different aspects of life. And I think that is the way forward.
Thank you. I'm going to turn to more questions from the audience. Microphone 5, then 4, then 2. Go ahead, let's start here.
Thank you. Phil McRae from Alberta, Canada. Excellent education systems are achieved through equity, and inequality is growing in Canada and indeed around the world. So my question for the panel is, how do we achieve excellence in education systems with rapidly growing inequalities, and specifically in public education systems like we have in Canada?
Thank you. That's such an important point. Yes, question over there.
Hi.
My name is Diana Aldejani. I'm a founder of EduTechnos, online games to teach children Arabic, and we look forward to inspire children to fall in love with Arabic language. And from my experience, one of the small challenges that I faced was basically because of my profession, which is computer engineering, and I'm not an Arabic teacher, and I don't have PhD in Arabic as well. So my questions regard the credibility of the creative idea that you have. Other than keep the research going on, keep moving forward, surrounding myself with the experts in this matter, do you have any other recommendations?
Sorry, do you mean that you think that the product that you've created doesn't have an inherent credibility because you're not an Arabic teacher yourself?
I've been facing such questions. For example, when you talk to people that you want to establish or start a research, what's your credibility? You're not a PhD. But I keep joking, saying I don't even have a box to think outside it. I'm the best candidate. So is there any recommendation you guys can tell me?
Okay, one for Charles in a moment. Can we go to microphone 3 and then back, or 2, and then we'll go to 3? Yes.
Hi, I'm Dr. Shwesa Jacqueline, and the founder of United for Autism. I am probably coming from different field, which is education, but for special needs children. My question to all, actually, not only the panelists, is should these children get involved into all this what you're doing in here? Should they be part on imagining, creating, learning, and getting together with all the rest of the children? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And question up there.
السلام عليكم. أخوكم فهد السبيعي من دولة الكويت، معلم لغة عربية. هي عبارة عن 3 كلمات. الكلمة الأولى كلمة شكر حق مؤسسة قطر على هذا.
I'm an Arabic professor
هي كلمة
in
عتاب
Kuwait.
على
First of all, I would
كل
like to
عربي
thank Qatar for
موجود في هذا
having
المؤتمر
organized
ولم
this
يتحدث.
summit. And secondly, I hold every Arabic-speaking person in the room responsible for not having spoken in Arabic today.
الكلمة الثالثة يمكن أنا كنت منتظر الوقت المناسب ويمكن وزير التربية الفرنسي السابق.
Well, I was waiting for the right moment, in fact, to ask my question in Arabic. And I believed that the former French minister can probably wear his headset to understand my question, probably. The question is, what is the role that language plays in creativity?
The role of language in creativity. Thank you. Actually, Sarah, let me turn to you, because obviously you've grown up in a multilingual environment here in Qatar. How much of a role do you think that has played in the broadening of minds?
For me to be bilingual, first of all, I had difficulties learning Arabic because I studied in the United States, and to learn Arabic was a challenge. But I noticed that if I gave an effort to learn it, I can be more creative. I was actually surprised that I can write in Arabic and people can be shocked. Creativity can come with languages, of course, but you have to have the will to fail again, and fail better. Of course, the learners are laughing because they know where it comes from.
Monsieur Lang, one of the things you are remembered for in France is the events that you set up every year, the musical events, the Fête de la Musique, which take place not just in France but in other countries as well. Music, we've already talked about arts, music, language. These are all things that train your brain in different ways and that can help unlock its potential.
Oui, et parfois traverse plus aisément.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And these things cross borders more easily than others. I think we need to strike a balance between the national traditions, national languages, as the gentleman just mentioned, and this desire to open one's doors to the world. And this is something that I find that Qatar has done particularly successfully. this desire to find its roots in its history, but at the same time a lot of tolerance for the rest, for other cultures and other peoples of the world. As to teaching Arabic, this is something that we spoke about with Her Highness yesterday, and I have the deepest respect for the work that she is doing and for the organization of this summit. We teach Arabic, of course, in France. It is a necessity. It's a universal language which represents and embodies universal culture. It is a political and economic necessity as well. And this morning, I believe that Al Jazeera's organizers explained to me that this is through the website I learned that this is something that is being developed across the world. I think it's important not to accept a culture based on a single language. Quite the opposite. We should encourage all sorts of languages because they embody creativity. I think it is necessary for young people to learn other languages, and over here in particular they should be allowed to learn Arabic, of course.
Charles, can I ask you to respond to the question about the inclusion of children with special needs, which is, of course, incredibly important, and not just learning needs, but, you know, the particular difficulties that disabled children have in some parts of the world in getting access, and also the point about when you come up with new solutions and how to present them.
Yes, so actually Phil's question is about equity, and so was this lady's question really about the treatment of children with special needs. And so the answer in a way to both questions is the same in a sense, which is when I started researching personalized learning now more than 10 years ago, I went first to schools working with children with special needs because they recognized that children with different needs could be treated in different ways and that schools had to become flexible and creative spaces to find different solutions to work with children in different ways. And if you simply took that recipe and then applied it to huge secondary schools, which are standardized factories, actually then you'd create a different kind of education system. So I continue to think that actually people with disabilities have huge amounts to teach other people in how to live well. And so to Phil's point about equity in these systems, the trouble is these systems are designed to do well for 30% of people who are academically attuned, cognitively equipped, and probably come from middle-class backgrounds. And as talent systems, if we were to judge education systems as talent development systems, they're dreadful. They waste huge amounts of talent. So the cause of equity is the cause of innovation. The reason to want innovation is for equity, to create more flexible, adaptive, appropriate, creative, engaging ways of learning for all of the population to bring out all of their skills. And at the moment, we write them off. Finally, if you're a startup, you have to be persistent and you have to really attack a problem that no one else wants to attack. So I would recommend starting where children are finding it hard to learn, but your approach can gain some traction by showing that it's starting to have a real impact. Apps for Good, the program that I am chair of, we started 4 years ago in a community centre in South London with 8 unemployed young men to show that if you could create a creative learning programme using apps on mobile phones, you could engage disengaged people. We're now in 400 schools with 20,000 students. That started from a problem and showing that you could really engage hard-to-reach people. So start small with a really important problem.
And don't give up.
Don't give up.
Thank you very much. Please join me in thanking all of our panel. Charles Leadbeater, Sarah Kamal, Jacques Lang. Thank you. Thank you very much. Don't forget to pick up a copy of Charles' latest book on your way out of the room. Now, some closing thoughts, because we are in our last few minutes here, and it's my pleasure to welcome back on stage the chairman of WISE, Dr. Abdullah bin Ali Al Thani.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Your Highness, Sheikh Hamouza bint Nasser, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are approaching the end of 3 intense and productive days at WISE 2014. We have listened to inspiring and challenging speakers and held lively debates and workshops. Many of you have commented favorably on the opportunities to connect and share ideas. The informal sessions have also been instructive, and I am pleased so many of you took the opportunity to engage in hands-on learning opportunities in the Majlis. We hope this will continue as an important feature of our future summits. Yesterday's session of the Education Above All Foundation increased our resolve to end the totally unacceptable situation of the many children around the world who have no access to high-quality schooling. And I am sure that, like me, you are all grateful for the inspiring reflections of our latest Prize of Education laureate, Anne Cotton. Anne truly embodies the determination and commitment to change that Her Highness Sheikh Hamouza bint Nasser set out to spread when she launched this great movement over 6 years ago. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, WISE has achieved a significant amount through its strategy of constructive collaboration. The cumulative effect of our programs over the years is making a difference to very many people. We have put in place a foundation and framework to help build the kind of education people need now and in the future. On a personal note, I would like to say it is an honor to contribute to the fulfillment of Her Highness' vision, and I'm thankful for entrusting this initiative to me since its inception. The essence of WISE, however, does not only lie in what is said here at our annual summit, or even in our numerous continuing programs. It is in the hearts and minds of thousands of individuals around the world who make up our extended WISE community. It is you who provide the ideas, energy, and concrete action which are having an impact upon societies around the world. We will be reaching out to you soon to help define the agenda for WISE in the year ahead, including the next summit. Let us therefore leave here with renewed determination to find fresh ways to tackle the problems of access, quality, and relevance of education at all levels and in all localities. This week's summit has reminded us that the path from imagination to achievement leads through creativity, and the scale of the problems we face demands that we apply our collective creativity to finding and implementing solutions. I thank you all for your input, and I urge you to remain connected and continue this important work. Thank you. وفي حفظ الله ورعايته.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Abdullah. And, you know, none of this would be possible without the work that you and your team put in 365 days of the year, because the WISE effort is ongoing all the time. So thank you very much. And as Dr. Abdullah said, WISE is about thought and about practice. And I'd like to remind you all that applications for the 2015 WISE Awards are open now. The search is on for the next batch of innovative educational projects making a difference to the communities they serve. So all the details of who's eligible, how to apply are on the WISE website, and the deadline is January the 15th, 2015. Also, some dates for your diary, because WISE 2015 will take place on these dates next year, the 3rd, 4th and 5th of November. So hopefully many people will be back in Doha for that. Something to look forward to. It remains only for me to thank Her Highness for being with us, and to thank you all for the contribution that you make to WISE and for the role that you play in the flourishing of this conversation. May it always be so. I wish you all well. I wish you a safe journey home. Thank you all. Goodbye.